For me, it's been completely life-changing. And if you told me 10 years ago I was going to have a book about my experience with alcohol called Bad Drunk, I would have thought you were mad. It's actually been really cathartic. And one of the reasons I wanted to do the book was to help other people who also struggled with either addiction or just an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and who for years had kind of wanted to stop but hadn't known how, or it's so ingrained in us to drink at every social situation. There were so many times when I said, okay, I'm not drinking tonight, or I'm going to take a break, or I've tried so many different ways to make drinking work for me or to cut back, and it just never lasted. And I wanted to do a book to talk about my experience because there's so much shame around this topic. Because I think especially for women as well, it's really a big problem that isn't talked about. Problem had been there since I was a teenager, but it had got worse over the years. And then after I became a mum, I think my mental health was struggling more than ever. And so when I was drinking, it was just an absolute disaster.
Being a teenager and almost kind of being, as I feel like I was in a way, indoctrinated into this culture of we drink a lot, sometimes we binge drink,
Yeah.
and it's really, really normalised. Now,
It's almost encouraged, like celebrate it.
yeah, and it may be quite competitive as well, this idea that who can drink the most, who got the most drunk, and people telling almost kind of war stories.
Like a badge of honour. Yeah,
Exactly.
completely.
It's really interesting to me that now young people are perhaps not behaving in that way so much. They haven't given up alcohol altogether because 75% of them are still drinking alcohol. But that 25%, they have decided that's not for them. Did you feel kind of growing up that if you didn't partake in that you were perceived as being no fun? And do you think that has maybe changed for
Totally.
young people now?
It was just the norm. It was what you did at parties. It was how you fit in. I don't remember anyone saying they didn't drink.
You were almost considered to be, the odd one out,
Or
weren't
you wouldn't
you?
get to the party if you didn't drink.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you wouldn't get
you
the
just wouldn't be
invite.
there.
Well, David, I wonder whether you can shed some light on why social cues and social pressures are so intertwined with the experience of drinking alcohol.
You're asking the question, why do we drink at all, really? Because we drink to socialize. Alcohol is the ultimate social drug, and that's why humans have cherished it for so many thousands of years, despite the obvious toxicity. And it works to make us more social. The strength of our species is that we're phenomenally successful because we're very social. We work in families, we work in tribes, we work in countries. But we're also quite anxious socially. And people drink at parties to break down that social anxiety so they can have the confidence to speak to other people. So we've used alcohol to overcome social anxiety for millennia. But the downside is that some of us are very vulnerable to drinking, and we can't stop, and then you get into problems like you did.
There's still a lot of stigma as well, isn't there, around issues with alcohol? So it's all very well to say, yes, it's the ultimate social lubricant and it makes us all feel good and it brings us closer together and it's for celebration. But if you admit that there's a problem, that's quite taboo. So that's quite weird, isn't it?
I remember when I first stopped drinking, somebody that was very much a big influence in my life, they kept saying to me when I tried to talk about it, she kept saying, you didn't have a problem. And I knew I did, but it was like reinforcing that if I did have a problem, that wouldn't be okay. That would be shameful. It was like, yeah, but you always took it too far, but you didn't have a problem.
But it's weird as well because we think of a problem in terms of quite a stereotypical set of signifiers, don't we? What is a drinking problem? What signifies a drinking problem? Who do we think of? We probably don't think of, a mum of two who enjoys a glass of wine with her friends. And yet, in that moment for you, it was very clear that you thought this is not right. Something feels wrong here, right?
Exactly. And I mean, the struggle was that it just wasn't just a glass, and that for me, it was never just one. I can't just have one.
You mentioned shame, and there's so much shame associated with dependency. I wonder, you talked about it being a very, very social drug. Could you also shed light on why we might feel so ashamed during drinking, after drinking? What happens there?
Well, if we fail to be part of the group because we can't take our drink, or our behavior changes badly as a result of it, then we're being ostracized from the group. Your social life was dominated, amongst your peers, it was dominated by drinking. If you're not drinking, you're not part of the group. If you're not part of the group, you're a weird one. That is what shame is, isn't it? Being ostracized from a group.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of myths about alcohol, and of course, the one that you've met most is the idea that you can drink responsibly.
Mm-hmm.
That is the sum total of what our educational message is on bottles. Drink responsibly. And we all know that most people, when they drink, want to lose responsibility. We want to break down some of that anxiety.
After the first one, the responsibility is forgotten.
I mean, it's absurd to rely on that as a way of helping people control their drinking. And so the comment you were making about the new generation of 20% cutting alcohol out completely tells us something interesting has happened, that they have learnt the truth somewhere. Hopefully from some of my writings, maybe from yours as well. But that's an interesting phenomenon, and I don't actually know where that's come from, because it's obviously not been promoted by the industry. It's not been promoted by Department of Health. It's emerged, from somewhere else. So I don't know where you think it has come.
I think it's partly because people are much more aware of their mental health as part of their overall health, and they're conscious of what they're doing, what their habits are, what they're consuming, and how that affects
they're
them
thinking more about themselves and
their brain health as well.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think we are all, post-pandemic, very concerned with our well-being, with our mortality, with how we move through the world with this body, with this brain. And, the positives of not drinking are spoken about by people like you. You've written this marvelous book that says, these are all the ways that I have felt better as a result of not drinking. I wonder if you can maybe shine a bit of light on some of those positives.
Positives for me really are like the time that I've got back, the time that I'm not spent hungover, the not having that feeling of dread when I wake up on the weekend, and actually being able to get out the house early, enjoy the day with my kids. And I really wasn't able to enjoy parenting when I'd been drinking the night before. And I love being a mum. I mean, it's hard, but I love it. And it was really stealing my joy. So it's being able to enjoy the small things. It's small changes like not missing workouts. So maybe, some of the first things I noticed was that I was working out more. So I felt better in my body. I felt stronger. I felt leaner. I lost a dress size, kind of stubborn body fat that just wouldn't go around my stomach. It went after maybe a month or two. I mean, there was sugar cravings at the beginning, don't get me wrong, because you're kind of missing the sugar. I know that's a really normal one. But the energy that you get back as well, and the clarity. It's just kind of this clarity that you get in your mind. It kind of took maybe a couple of months to come.
I think people often, they talk about the trade-off, don't they? And how after they've given up drinking, there's almost like this newfound appreciation for life, because they've traded one thing that they thought was bringing them joy, and they've discovered this whole new way of being. And often when I read, articles or interviews that talk about that experience, I feel quite inspired in a way that, old cynical me would be quite surprised by, because I used to really enjoy drinking, and now it just does not really fit with the kind of lifestyle that I have. So I can really relate to a lot of those points, getting time back, feeling fresher, having more time for things that you really enjoy.
Also, and it's pushed me to experience things that I wouldn't normally have done. Like go to do an ecstatic dance class, go and, try and get my dopamine hits in other ways. Like one of the crazy things I did, I'm quite scared of heights. I went and did a Go Ape course, which is, in the treetops in a harness.
Yeah, I mean, that will give you, something,
going and doing ice baths, going and, doing biohacking and, all kinds of different things to just get that natural high.
The getting high on life thing, I think, is quite cool, because it's a cliche, but there's a lot to it, isn't there? The idea that the brain is this wonderful tool, and most of us aren't actually using it in the right way, is quite an interesting one.
Well, that's right. I mean, alcohol is very convenient. It's a very easy way of changing your brain. I mean, probably, I think it's the most used drug in the world.
But it's not necessarily the only drug, is it? I mean, there's so many different things that we can do, but that do give us a buzz.
Yeah, and some of them are dangerous, like horse riding, but we don't need to go there.
Famously, yeah. I just want to pause for a second to let you know that conversations like this one are such a crucial part of destigmatizing the conversation around alcohol in the UK. And in order to keep having these conversations, we really, really need your support. So one thing you can do is like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. But I wonder as well about alcohol alternatives. I personally have found some really, really great ones, and they certainly hit the spot for me. I wonder if you've got any favourites, Millie. I know you've
Yes.
recommended some in the
So I've
past.
tried quite a few because I've been sober over 3 years now, and I don't want something that mimics alcohol. I just don't care for it. I don't want a white wine without the alcohol in it. Like, I just don't.
I think that's wise.
It's just also just for me, it's just not the same thing. And
Why
I
would you have
don't.
it if you could have something
Yeah,
delicious? Yeah.
I don't find I just don't. I don't think it tastes good. So my favourites are Trip, which they've got Mindful Blend, which either has like magnesium in it, which is really calming, or they've got the CBD drinks as well. Those are delicious. There's a really great brand called 3 Spirit, which has like kind of different adaptogenic ingredients. They've got one that's called the Livener that's quite nice before an event, and then they've got one called Nightcap, which is a bit more relaxing.
So you're a fan of the functional drinks?
Yeah, I like the functional drinks. I want something that's kind of going to do something for, either elevating my mood or helping me to calm down.
And this leads us on really nicely to talk about Sentia, which is obviously...
Well, we've always got to start sending you some.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
If you haven't tried it already, I would recommend it because I really enjoy it. It's one of my favourites. But I wonder if David can tell us a little bit more about it and how it works, because this is a functional drink that essentially makes you feel a bit waved, makes you feel a bit tipsy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's designed to give people what they're looking for with alcohol, but without the harms of alcohol, and but also without the tendency of moorishness that alcohol produces not in everyone, but in someone like you who
I have one and I want 100.
Yeah, and that's because you've talked about it. You've talked about the dopamine hit, and for some people, alcohol does release dopamine, and that dopamine then it drives you to take more and more. And on top of that, that also gets you into an addictive cycle. So what we've done is we've basically found herbs which enhance relaxation in the brain through a particular neurotransmitter called GABA, but don't do anything to dopamine or the endorphins or the other systems that you were engaging with when you basically got drunk.
That sounds great.
It's wonderful. And I think the idea that we're kind of looking back to plants and plant intelligence to signal new ways to maybe nudge the brain is quite interesting, because the reason we discovered alcohol was because we were messing around with plants originally, right? That's where it came from.
Yeah, we were picking up rotting fruit and wondering why the pigs enjoyed it, and then we realised, wow, that's quite interesting. Yes, we can enjoy it too.
Yeah, but obviously knowing now what we know and having the scientific capability to create something that isn't going to harm us is great.
Can I just add to that a bit? So the ingredients in Sentia, I mean, they've all been known. Everything in there was actually in the food chain before 1997. That's why it's a food. And many of them have been known for thousands of years. We looked into Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, historic use of herbs in Western Europe as well. So there's been a tradition of using herbs. We've just kind of forgotten it. And that's partly because the drinks industry has been so effective at dominating all the discourse on what you might drink. And it's good to resurrect some of that historic knowledge about various different botanicals, which have been used, as I say, for centuries in different cultures to produce relaxation.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to me that the wellness industry is now worth more than the alcohol industry. So we're looking at this really interesting shift. But I do think that often it can feel quite intimidating to give up alcohol, certainly in a culture where we have been brought up to just drink. It's part of who we are. It's part of our social fabric. But for someone who thinks, I really, really want to give up, but all my friends drink, I don't know how I can walk into a pub and say, oh, not for me. What can people do?
I think one of the biggest shifts for me was getting really informed, and like the research you do, like what you talk about, what alcohol actually does to your body and brain. When you learn that information, it's kind of hard to forget it. I think that was one of the first things I did. I definitely want to stop for good this time. And I just downloaded all the podcasts I could find about quitting alcohol. I bought books. I just was like, I wanted to consume as much information as I could. I think I started with the Andrew Huberman podcast, which was called like What Alcohol Does to Your Body and Brain. That was a real shift for me. And then I got a sober coach. So I'd say get help. There's groups, depends, like every person's story and journey is so different. You've got to find like what works for you. For me, a sober coach weekly was what I did for about 6 months. So I had that support. And I'd just say, tell, like, have a couple of people close to you that know. And when you're going to those events and those things which feel tough, just have like a wingman with you, have someone with you that knows that it's going to be a bit tricky for you to get through that social anxiety without a drink, someone that can squeeze your hand, someone that can just kind of just be your support, because it is hard. And also find the alternative that you like and bring it with you.
Bringing it with you is a good shout, actually. I remember seeing you
Well, that's the
posting-
problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because most places don't have alternatives. In
That's
fact,
it.
very few places have
Yeah,
alternatives.
there's a lot more than there used to be, but
It
often
used to be Diet Coke or
in
a soda.
in a pub, it might only be an alcohol-free beer, and you might not want something that tastes like alcohol.
Exactly, yes. In Gabba Labs, we're trying to promote the idea that everyone should have the option of a functional drink in any place where alcoholic drinks are provided. Because currently there is no choice. It's either alcohol or a very expensive lemonade, which
Yeah.
Or a
doesn't
£15
do-
mocktail, which
Or like
must be
like
stopped.
a Coca-Cola or whatever, which is also not, like, we know, not good for your health.
When you're out on a night out and you are drinking juice after juice after juice, it's a lot of sugar as well, isn't it? These alternatives can sometimes make you feel a bit toxed out.
I've had like a sugar hangover
Yeah.
from drinking mocktails
Yeah.
and woken up with that kind of headache, pounding head, and thought, I didn't even drink alcohol last night and I still feel awful. So it's the sugar is a big part.
Yeah, and I do think, having decent functional alternatives is a really, really good option for people who are just getting started, because it is tricky, isn't it? It's all about small incremental changes. You mentioned working with a sober coach as well. I wonder if you can illustrate what that might look like, because it might be something people haven't heard of before.
So essentially it's like doing therapy, specifically related to why I drank and going back into all of my history with alcohol. He kept trying to wanting to go back to my childhood at the beginning, and I was like, no, like we don't need to go there, like we just and we did need to go there. I think a few sessions in, it kind of clicked, right, okay, that we're going to have to do the hard work that I've really not wanted to do. I think the first step for anyone who wants to stop drinking is to put down the drink, is to not choose every day to wake up and not have a drink that day. But that's really just the beginning, because then what you really have to do is look at all the things in your life that you've avoided emotionally, like dealing with, and you need to deal with those emotions, because that is what is driving you to drink in a destructive way or use any drug in a destructive way. And unless you get to those root causes, you will probably drink again, or you will find another addiction.
But the kind of the backslide or the slip up, it's also not the end of the world, is it? And I think often people get quite all or nothing about their health. They think, if I've skipped a day at the gym, that's it. I'm not going back.
I think that's a big part of the sober curious journey. For a lot of people, I've got sober curious friends, and they maybe drink once or twice a year. God, I think that's amazing for them. They can do that, but I know for me, it's not safe to do that. So I think you've got to have the understanding of, okay, could that one drink lead to a disastrous night that you'll really regret?
I'm interested in how you communicate to people you don't know who are trying to push drinks on you, because it must happen all the time. Do you say, I've got a drink problem, or you just say, I don't drink
sometimes. If someone was really pushing it, because sometimes it really shuts them up.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite.
You're just like, I actually have a problem with alcohol. Yeah. I think you do have to be careful if you are sober. Like, don't let anyone buy your drinks for you. Like, reiterate to the barman like 3 times to make sure that they got it from the like alcohol-free section of the menu and they didn't get confused, because you don't want to get like thrown off by taking a sip of the wrong drink. So people can be insensitive to it. So like, I've got friends who'll be like, oh, if we go out for dinner, like, do you mind if I drink? And I'm like, I do not mind. Like, I don't judge. Like, my husband still drinks. There's alcohol in the house. It's not an issue for me that I would think, okay, I've got to try really hard not to be tempted to drink it. But I don't particularly want to be around loads of drunk people.
And that's the
That's
difference.
my
isn't
limit.
it?
Yeah.
And you start to notice, don't you, if you're not drinking and everyone else is?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, did I used to behave like
notice?
that?
And then I'm like, that was me.
Yeah.
Have you been able to in your friends who probably didn't have quite this problem you have, but they still had a problem with alcohol, have you been able to communicate with them? Have they changed? Have they seen you and thought,
I feel like a few of my friends that used to drink a lot that have calmed down over the like started drinking less in the last few years, maybe even since lockdown, and some have just drifted away. And I think that also happens because you hold up a mirror to people, which can be really uncomfortable. And there were, at the beginning, it was hurtful seeing, on social media pictures of a dinner that I thought, okay, I probably would have been invited to that. If I was still drinking, I would have been at that dinner, and not getting asked to go. It did sting a bit at the beginning, but then I'm like, I wouldn't want to be there.
You have to recontextualize it, don't you? And just think, okay, well, if everyone's going to be getting blind drunk and they didn't invite me, and I wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway, this is
Yeah,
this
I'm
is where I'm
okay with
supposed to
it
be.
now.
I wonder as well, David, whether you have any tips for someone who might be at the beginning of that journey, whether it's looking to something that's more functional or whether you've got more practical tips for someone who doesn't want to drink.
well, I think the first thing, I mean, the key message is that people should think about their drinking. And when you start to do that, you realize several things. You realize that a lot of the drinks you drink don't have any value at all. It gets worse, but some people can get to a point when they don't even remember what drinks they drank, so they clearly didn't have any purpose. So that's the first thing, to actually be objective about drinking, as you would be about any other aspect of health, like weight or blood pressure or cholesterol or whatever. So, this is a serious thing you're doing. It's a drug. It's like a medicine. Think of it as a medicine rather than just as fun. And the second point, and I've been very interested in your perspective on this, if anyone has ever said to you, I think you drink too much, or are you sure you want that, take it seriously, because it's actually quite challenging to confront a friend with a concern about drinking, because they can often turn on you. But if anyone's ever done that, do think, oh, that probably means something. And actually, I'm really interested in, was there a trigger for you to stop? Was there one event
Yeah.
that made you stop?
That,
Or a comment?
I mean, I had so many disastrous ones, but in the last year, there was a comment from a best friend who said, I just can't see you do this to yourself anymore. She said, you just can't handle it. She said, you're too sensitive. She said, it just doesn't agree with you.
That's a very nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
And you listened.
Did
you resist it?
I didn't stop then, but it was a seed.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a seed. It maybe was 6 months later that I stopped.
So that's true friendship, isn't it? If you can actually say to a friend that I genuinely think about this, don't criticize them, but just think, and it worked in your case.
We have a piece that went up on The Independent in the last couple of days from a therapist who has given some advice on how to speak to a friend, because as you say, it's a really, really
it's so
sensitive
sensitive.
subject, but it's something that she encounters a lot. People are coming to her all the time saying, I don't know how to speak to this person, but I love them, so it's important to me. And that, I think, is really pertinent, because alcohol can be fun, but it can also be something that, really wrecks lives. And that's really difficult to see if you're on the outside looking in. And I do think that our behaviours, although they have changed, we also do still harbour this kind of shame and stigma. Some people hide their drinking. Some people act like it's not an issue. And that's really difficult to see. Sometimes it just goes under the radar. You might not realise that a relative, a partner, anybody is struggling with something like that. But you can kind of get a sense of it.
It's a huge point you're making, that so many people drink themselves to death and their relatives don't know. I had a friend whose daughter did that, and it wasn't until she was dead that they discovered that she even was a drinker at all. She'd hidden it so well. And the reason it was being hidden was because of shame. And actually, what you've done is amazing. To go in, to overcome that and go public with a book. I mean, that's fantastic as a role model. It's brilliant.
I think particularly like my parents' generation found having a drinking problem was shameful. And I think that's why for so long I found it really hard to admit to myself that I did have a problem. And then once I actually started talking about it online, I realized there was so many people, particularly women, who would reach out and say, they've had such similar experiences to me. The binge drinking as a teenager, which went on into their 20s, not knowing when to stop, the regret, the trying a million different ways to make alcohol work for you, and just, feeling like you're in a kind of on a hamster wheel, or like you're stuck in a cycle of just the same behavior repeating itself, no matter how hard you try to change it. And it really does destroy lives. And for a lot of people, the only way to abstain is just to completely stop. Because I think the temptation is like, if you have one, maybe I'll just have one. And then it's for a lot of people, it's very hard to just stop at one.
Absolutely. And it's weird, isn't it? Because we've got this stereotype of like the fun wine mum.
I mean, the links to cancer are so scary, and that's really not talked about. And I think it is uncomfortable to talk about it, but it's linked to 7 different cancers.
That's right, yeah.
It's like if that was written on the bottle, people would think differently about it.
It's meant to be, but the drinks industry has resisted for the last 25 years, properly declaring
it is on a cigarette packet.
Exactly.
And it should have a clear warning, but people don't want to make the link that alcohol could be just as dangerous as cigarettes.
Well, let's talk about the impact. I mean, David, you must have a really clear insight, given your work, into what alcohol actually does to the body. How is it affecting us in terms of our short-term or long-term health?
Wow, how long have we got?
All the time in the world to hear about this, because I really want to get to the bottom of it. Because I've also heard these old adages like red wine in moderation, good for you. It contains polyphenols, resveratrol.
It's full of antioxidants.
Yeah, it's why French women look so good.
Oh.
But is any amount of alcohol ever good for us?
No. A few years ago, a couple of Germans decided to put alcohol through the European food safety testing regime. So suppose you invented alcohol today as a food additive, as a flavoring, or even as an intoxicant in food. The recommended safe amount per year is 150 mils of alcohol.
Per year?
Per
year.
Okay, so many of us have drunk that much in a day.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it has it's only recently we realized quite how toxic it was. We give a very protected place to alcohol because we enjoy it. And it's part of our heritage. Almost every cell in the body will be affected by alcohol. It gets into those cells. It's quite toxic. You have a scrape on your skin, you kill the bugs with alcohol. If it can kill bugs are tougher than your skin cells. They're tougher than your cells in your body.
Yeah.
So it's potentially toxic to every cell in the body. So yes, it's alcohol harms most things, most organ systems.
And that's without all of the lifestyle implications, like the shame, the hangovers, the depressions.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the health costs of alcohol, the reason alcohol is the most harmful drug in the UK is largely because of the social harms of alcohol. It's not the most harmful drug to the user. Crack or crystal or heroin or fentanyl are more dangerous to the user, but because so many people drink alcohol. But the health costs in terms of health, they're in terms also of policing alcohol. Policing drunkenness costs twice as much as the health costs of alcohol. Amazing. And then above all that, more than the two together are the opportunity costs from hangovers and absenteeism from work.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about time off work. I mean, I guess that's something that affects a lot of people still.
That's why they brought in licensing law. They didn't have licensing laws until the First World War. It was a joke that no one worked to work in the mines on a Monday because the miners would spend all their money over the weekend on alcohol, and they would be so hungover they couldn't go to work. So that was affecting the war effort. So actually, that's why they brought in licensing laws. But that also drove the abstinence movement, the prohibitionist movement, because not only were the men being very drunk, but they were actually depriving their kids and their partners of income. So alcohol was seen as actually doubly damaging to the economy and also to families.
Because wages were going straight into the pub and
Absolutely.
Not to the families.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever see a kind of prohibition-style measure in this country?
No, we won't have prohibition, because prohibition had some rather unpleasant side effects, collateral damage. What we should be doing is making alcohol more and more expensive. We should be taxing it appropriately.
I mean, you're going to be unpopular saying that to some people.
Yeah, but it saves money. Well, I wrote a piece a few years ago. Appropriate taxation would actually save everyone money. Well, it would save people that pay taxes money anyway.
Yeah.
So the middle class who are drinking alcohol, they could afford to pay. They should pay more for their alcohol. Alcohol probably is about a third the price it should be, and the loss to the individual in terms of what the extra cost of drinking would be more than offset by the benefit to them in terms of the reduced need for other taxes to deal with pay for the policing and the health, etc. So there will be a net benefit of you get more money from the alcohol tax, and you'd also reduce consumption, so you'd reduce harms. It would be a virtuous circle.
Yeah, and I guess if people are living longer because, they haven't got that kind of alcohol poisoning that might be making people live shorter lives now, that money would be available to keep them feeling better for longer.
That's an interesting thought. Yes, can we? Yeah, I'm not saying that analysed, but I think it's plausible. Yeah.
Might be onto something.
Do you think we should be teaching more in schools?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I think we've got a real dearth of information for young people, haven't we?
We don't teach kids about the harms of alcohol. We see so often kids are looking after their parents because their parents are drunk, and they're doing that until they leave home, and that's very stressful to them, and also obviously takes away a lot of their ability to learn and do homework, etc.
Yeah, a lot of the resourcing, I guess, for education on mental health, on, body literacy, sex education, a lot of that, I think, that RSE money, we need to be thinking about educating kids.
And the reverse is happening. The drinks industry has become, be a bit careful how I phrase this, but let's put it another way. There's a disturbing amount of advertising on social media about alcohol that gets to kids. Kids under 10 know a lot about what the preferred drinks in the world are, and you're not supposed to advertise to anyone under 18, but social media has become very the barriers are very limited, and for reasons, whether it's the industry or whether it's just marketers, but there's a surprising amount of advertising that gets to teenagers about drink way before they're allowed to buy it.
Well, we know that social media is a pretty toxic place in terms of things reaching kids when it's not supposed to.
I think a lot of people, they start drinking, as soon as you can get your hands on it. For me, it was probably about 12.
And was that kind of taking it from your mum and dad's house or getting people to buy it for you?
Like taking it from mum and dad's house, going to parties where a few alco pops were allowed, but normally it was like you've got the bottle of vodka in your bag that you're like topping up.
Which is a pretty hard spirit for for a young person.
I mean, that was probably from about kind of 14.
I remember with my daughters, we had to search people coming to parties to stop them bringing in the vodka bottles.
Yeah, because it's like the vodka in the water bottle, or like you're going to a sleepover. And
and the number of times we had to put kids in recovery position. Because, in fact, there was a period when one of my daughters had a very active friendship group who were very into alcohol. Every party, one of them was going to hospital because they were so drunk, and it potentially could have been lethal.
It's really scary.
Yes.
I mean, I've had alcohol poisoning probably twice, and you really feel like you're going to die.
Yeah, well, people do, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say it's a really sobering thought, but that's probably not the best.
Sorry, it's got really like deep, but it is really serious. Like, I was doing a talk the other day, and there was questions at the end, and I was talking about my book and talking, it's kind of like a sober, curious topic. There was a woman in the audience, and she said, my husband, she was obviously really hurting, and she was angry, and she said, my husband is an alcoholic, and I don't know what to do, and how do I get him to stop? And she was so upset, and I really, to be honest, I really didn't know what I could say to her, because it is so painful, and if the person isn't ready to stop themselves, apart from really role modeling yourself and encouraging them, you can't force them to stop. Do you have any kind of comments?
I've been asked this question thousands of times, and I always say, well, give them a copy of my book, because there's a chance they might read a bit of it, and they might reflect a bit on what they're drinking, but also never confront them when they're drunk. Yeah, it's a thing, because very often men get very drunk and belligerent, but often the next day they're apologetic, and that's the time to confront them. but
when
never
they're
take
feeling
them.
guilty.
Exactly, and then explain how it's hurtful it is to you, and how it repeats itself, and they will almost certainly then at least concede they need to change, and then you've got to then be ready to help them make the change,
Yeah.
and that could be probably best for a GP. Go to a
Yeah.
GP with that person, and then you're in the system, and then also the GPs do have a sort of status which. If the GP gives you advice and you don't follow that, there's more stigma. So you're beginning to
Yeah.
sort of put more pressure on from different directions.
So you'd advise going to see your doctor, because I think for some people they maybe think, maybe this isn't a problem for my doctor, but you think that it's worth doing.
Going straight to something like AA is often really challenging because, I mean, that's kind of, well, am I that bad? And you may be, but it may not be. And AA really probably doesn't suit the majority of people. If it does suit you, then it's great. It's very supportive. You've got your mentor, etc. But going into a large group, 50, 60 people, a lot of people who drink, they do that and they say we're not quite the same as the people in AA, and there are different reasons why people drink too much. It's not just that they lose control. Others are drinking to do with mental health problems. AA aren't particularly sympathetic to that. It's all about alcohol is the problem, not your brain. So dealing with your mental health problems needs some other approach, and your GP is definitely there's an option of finding the right support through there.
That probably really chimes for you, Millie, doesn't it? Because I remember when we spoke about your book originally, you were saying to me that AA just doesn't feel like the right fit for a lot of women, especially.
Yeah. There's something comforting about the being in the group and having sharing your experiences in a room with other people that all get it. There is something about 12-step that is, I think I'll do a 12-step program at some point. I think everyone would benefit from doing a 12-step program.
I would agree.
But I think a lot of the AA, for me, I think it helps a lot of people. Not saying, I mean, I think it's really great, but it feels quite male dominated and quite stuck in the past.
There are new outlets, aren't there? You've got a great community online where people feel that they can come and they can speak to each other about
And
this.
there's lots of sober coaches that do online courses. If it's not accessible to you to do private sessions, there are group courses. There's so many more people talking about it now. There's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of books. I think it's getting the support and having other people to speak to that are going through a similar thing. It's really helpful.
Well, both of your books hold so many tips, and having read them both, I do think that just having access to stuff like this is really, really important. So I would encourage everybody to read both books because they are excellent. And speaking of tips, I always ask my guests in every episode what their one tip for better wellness would be and what their one non-negotiable would be when it comes to their health. I wonder if we can start with you, David. What would yours be?
I just want to say one thing to support you, and I want to talk about the impact on your children, because there's unquestionably what you have done will have an amazing impact on your children. There is no question about it. And the reason I say that is,
no, sorry, it just makes me feel so emotional.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Do you
well,
want to pause for a
because
second?
you've transformed. How many kids you have?
2.
You've transformed the lives of 3 people, and the reason I say that is that about 5 years ago, I did a program, you and yours, in the BBC 4 program. It did a phone-in on parents with alcoholism. The most phoned-in program on you and yours ever. They all were ringing in about parents drinking. Most of them were women, and many of them were in their 60s and 70s, and their whole lives had been blighted by having drunk parents. I was amazed by the number who'd rung in. I was amazed by the fact that it's a kind of enduring harm. So the fact your kids aren't going to suffer that is fantastic. And, that in many ways is the message to get across to mothers. You're doing it not for you, you're doing it for your kids.
And that is ultimately my girls were the ultimate motivation to stop. They were 6 months and 2 when I stopped. So they're now nearly 4 and 5, and they'll have no memory of me drinking.
Exactly.
Yeah, it will never have been a part of their life. And I don't want to make you feel emotional, but you should be really, really proud of
You
yourself.
should.
No, I am
Absolutely.
I'm a very emotional person. It's I'd say the gift is also the emotional sobriety that you stop drinking the toxic substance, but then you can really start doing the work on yourself to become fully emotionally sober. And that's really the work that I'm doing now. And I think that is really the thing that can transform your life.
When we're able to kind of move all of the crap aside and step into the version of ourselves that we think about when we think about our highest self or our best self, I think that's really, really powerful, isn't it? And often makes me feel quite emotional as well, because when we talk about doing the work,
Yeah.
it's hard like that, isn't it? It's not easy stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that experience and also for pulling on that thread, David. I want to ask you, Millie, what your one wellness non-negotiable is and whether you have one. I'm sure you have loads.
I've got loads. I was thinking about this. I was like, what would my one be? And it's like, would it be like having a protein-rich breakfast, or would it? And I was like, I mean, all those things like doing my meditation and then working out are great. I think being really honest and clear with yourself about anything in your life that's making you unhappy, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a person, whatever it is, like a toxic habit, don't wait to change. Like, just do it, because you never know how long you've got left. Life is short, and if something is stealing your joy, like, make the change. Don't wait.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you both. If you enjoyed this episode with Millie and Professor David, I know you'll love this episode with Owen O'Kane and Matt Johnson on the importance of male mental health and how we keep the conversation going.